Hi, I'm Mimi Chan. Welcome to Culture Chat. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, and thank you to everyone who has been with Greg Rucka and I during our COVID-19 quarantine podcast marathon. These conversations have been one of the only positives to come out of the coronavirus pandemic. In this episode, we discuss the Mimi and Greg origin story. I thought it would be fun to share how we met and how we ended up where we are today. Greg also talks about the evolution of comic conventions over the years. He shares the good, the bad, and the ugly, but as always is very, very honest. Don't forget to read along with us and submit questions by October 1st for our book club. The next read is Greg's very own Atticus Kodiak novels. We are reading Critical Space, Patriot Acts, and The Walking Dead. For those that don't already know, Greg Rucka is a New York Times best-selling author of hundreds of comics and nearly 24 novels. He is also the writer for the hit film The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. I'm loving these conversations and hope you are too. If you are, please rate my podcast on your platform of choice. And if you'd like to support and keep this podcast going with a donation, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com. For comments or suggestions, email me at mimi@culturechatpodcast.com or reach out on social media at @SifuMimiChan. Now, on with the show. Hello, Greg. Nice to see you.
How are you, Mimi?
I'm all right. Nice to see you as always.
Thank you.
I'm getting a little concerned you're going to get tired of me because, we've been having, this week we're actually having 3 conversations.
I just look tired. I'm not tired of you.
Okay.
I'm just genuinely fatigued. That's got nothing to do with you.
Okay. That's good. That's good to know. Well, I am really excited because you and a few others, which remains to be seen yet, but will be joining me in a week or so at the Hawaii. I've been calling it less than a week. Yeah, I've been calling it Hawaii United, but it's literally like several Hawaii Comic Cons that have all joined together to do a huge virtual thing. Very last minute, Hawaii style, but
the Hawaii Federated Comic Book, whatever.
Yes, exactly, et cetera, et cetera. Mm. So not my job to come up with their title. So, but it's pretty exciting and great friend of mine, Aaron Yamasato. Thank you for, inviting us. But basically, he runs Kauai Comic Con, not Kauai Comic Con. 2 different ones, by the way. And they are joining together.
Are they 2 different ones because they're 2 different places?
So yeah, Kauai is the island of Kauai. And then Kauai apparently is the anime one. So I think that the spelling's completely different.
But both take place on Kauai.
No, one is on Kauai, and then I don't know where Kauai is. I think it's on maybe Big Island. I'm not sure which island that one's on.
Yeah. I suspect there are intricacies to this that one only understands if one is a native.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyes.
I thought for sure the island was called Kauai. But I guess not. Huh?
Yeah, they always say Kauai because it's Kauai. So that's Kauai. And then the let's see, the Kauai Con is kind of like Hawaii with KA at the beginning. And it's their.
I'm out. I'm already out. It's too much.
Oh
too
my
much.
God. So funny.
The caffeine has not fully lodged.
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. So
this is going to be an entertaining. This is going to be an entertaining one for you.
I love it.
I'm not sure how many thrusters are firing right now.
So we shouldn't get into like deep philosophical subjects today. We'll keep it light.
We're never going to do that anyway. Yeah.
Well, like I've been telling you the last several weeks, we've been having, I don't have a bunch of listener questions today. I do have questions for you as always, but we've been having so many kind of just like fun comments and feedback in terms of the Mimi and Greg show banter that has become a thing since March. And I just actually went back to our first episode and kind of did a re-listen of the first one since the first one since coronavirus from COVID, not the first one. Right. And it was just so funny. From
the start of the COVID sequence.
Exactly.
As they will refer to it in years to come. In the Mimi culture chat canon, this will be referred to as the COVID sequence.
I love it. I love it. And so now I have a canon, which is great. But it's funny because, you literally on the air was like, oh, well, let's just talk again next week. I'm going to pencil it in right now. And I was like, you don't know what you're doing, sir.
Bad fool. Look what you have done.
And I said, this is what happens. And ironically, we are literally at almost like our 1 year mark from our first interview live in Portland, which was Rose City. Yeah. So I thought this would be, I know.
It was about a year ago.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was like the 14th or 15th or something of September. And so literally we are at the 1 year anniversary mark of when we did our first episode live, in which I was graciously invited to go to your home, even though you didn't know me at all. Marlo stole the show. And I thought it would be kind of fun for our listeners who have been along the ride with us. Because like I said, one of our listeners, and I've got to find it and screenshot it for you, but they literally wrote a little jingle for us as an intro, and it still needs some work in progress. But it's been a lot of fun to see that people have actually been enjoying this dynamic, and I thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of a Mimi Greg origin story so that our listeners can kind of know how that went. Because
that actually syncs up pretty well because you and I met in San Diego.
Yes.
Because I was in San Diego
for Stumptown,
which we found out yesterday ABC has canceled. So
really?
As of yesterday, they announced, like with no warning, that they are canceling season 2.
No.
And so today there is some running around on the part of some of the producers seeing if they can't get it set up somewhere else. But I think that's an ironic sort of anniversary that you and I met because I was in San Diego.
Yes.
For Stumptown, because otherwise I would not be in San Diego.
Which is exactly kind of where I wanted to start. And it's interesting because, of course, there's your point of view of how that weekend went. And then there's my point of view. And I thought this would be a lot of fun because I went to San Diego to host a panel on Cosplayers Ready Your Swords, which was teaching, people how to use their weapons, pose with them, the cosplayers. And I thought it'd be fun. I did my Mulan thing. I did a signing, and it was my first time ever to San Diego at all. And I ended up, hosting a panel, which was crazy. But my ulterior motive, which was, of course, as a major fan, was to go out and just like try to meet as many of my favorites as possible and stalk them down. And so I ended up doing that. Right. But so I think I contacted you through Instagram, which thank God you have.
It was through Instagram because that's the only place I'm accessible now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I was like first beyond shocked that you even got the message because, you have all these thousands of fans and, sometimes you don't really check that stuff. And so I just thought,
I'm bad about it. But but you were persistent.
So, I am super right. Which is what I wanted to ask. Like, were you kind of like, well, if I don't reply, I guess she'll just never stop like writing messages?
No, it wasn't that. I mean, I'm not. I am not above the if you ignore it, it'll go away school of avoidance. But in all sincerity, a lot of the time it depends on how those requests come in and how they're phrased.
Yes.
And I mean, you were very gracious and you were very polite and you made it clear you were very accommodating. And then you also followed up because I had seen it. And then, of course, as life goes.
And Comic-Con is crazy. It's not like it's just normal there. You had a schedule.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you were doing it well in advance of that, I think. And I think you had sent like a follow-up like the following week. And I was like, oh, you know what? I should respond to this. And sometimes what I'll do is Mark Waid tells a story of going to being invited to a Comic-Con outside of the US, I believe somewhere in South America, and agreeing to attend And then getting there to discover that the con was basically 4 guys.
Oh my God.
Who took him back to their house for like 2 days.
What? Oh my God.
Yeah. So there is a certain amount of due diligence one is inclined to engage in.
Yeah, that's Mark's bad. I mean, to go out of the country on that.
Well, I mean,
Didn't he have an agent or someone to help him?
No. And don't even get there. There's a whole other thing about the whole
your managers and
well, there has been this bullshit. Now we're going to digress.
Okay.
There's been this bullshit that I think is actually incredibly damaging to the comics industry and to the convention industry. And it's the natural byproduct of things like Fan Expo and Reed Pop and even Wizard being these really grotesquely for hire or for profit events.
Yes.
And the result of that was that they were paying a lot of people a lot of money to attend, and comics creators weren't. So that what's happened in the last 5 years in particular is that there have been a couple people who have moved in and are now gathering up comics talent and creating blocks, but they're charging exorbitant amounts. So for instance, comic book writer X is invited to a show. They have to go through that person's now self-declared manager who says it's going to be $30,000.
Oh,
right.
Wow.
For person X to appear, of which manager is taking almost 50%.
Yeah.
And then what they're doing is they're saying, and if you want, for instance, artist A, you also have to take artists B, C, D, F, L, and Q. And that'll be another $150,000 or whatnot, of which manager gets almost 50%. And so that creates this engine where, when I started going to conventions, you went to conventions because that was your chance to meet the fans.
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't charge for your signature because they bought the goddamn book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And that, as it developed, I was, I would only charge for a signature if specifically it was a CGC grading and witnessed event,
mm-hmm.
right? Or if it was for a fundraiser,
okay.
right?
Right. Because
but one of the things that's happened now is that you are seeing a whole lot of talent. The problem is all this trickles down to the fan, and it makes it harder and harder for the fans.
Of course, not
all of that to go back to the Mark thing. Back in the day, the concept of you having any sort of representation for doing a con was absurd. You were in comics. They're comics. You don't need a manager for freaking comics. That's, and that's the other part of it, which is to imply that, look, people love their comics. Comics are great. I love doing comics. I love being in comics. Let's not pretend that it's the same thing as being, the lead actor, say in Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm,
all right. Mm-hmm. You're not on the same level.
Yeah.
Don't pretend you are. And stop acting like you should be treated like you are. Mm-hmm. Because your best-selling comic, unless your name happens to be Raina, is maybe 250,000 copies right now. And your best episode of Doctor Who was maybe, 20 million people globally? Maybe more? I don't know. So the numbers don't equate.
Yes.
That said, so you had reached out, and like I said, I was like, well, you seem legit.
Well, I do my due diligence as well, because I try to make sure you see the web address. And luckily I had already had like Scott Shaw and Stan Sakai on the show, like actual bona fide people.
And Stan was actually a big plus, because I've known Stan since I came into the industry.
And he's the nicest guy. Like, you can't not love Stan.
Yeah, no, he is a remarkable human being.
Yes.
So, it was like, well, if I'm going to be down there, then it's not a thing.
Yes. Yes.
Right. It's like, that's no skin off my nose. So yeah, I mean, it was you and it was Oscar.
Yes, and then I had a camera guy with me in case we ended up having an interview. But obviously, it's San Diego Comic-Con. You had your Stumptown panel, which of course was crazy. I wasn't going to try to approach you there. And then you had
was a weird
dinner. Yeah, and then you had a dinner, and you're like, "Well, I don't know if I'll be up for it, but you can meet me after my dinner. We can at least connect and just like have a discussion." So. Yeah. I'm running like from, we had just eaten and then I was like trying to meet you, in the lobby so that we could like kind of just at least touch base. Cause for me, I am much better and more effective in my opinion in person. Like I want to be able to sit and talk to someone and I just think I'm more convincing in person. Is what it is. And so we're running to meet you and you're like, okay, I'm headed over back after dinner, whatever. And there's just thousands of people everywhere. Yeah, Oscar, me, and it's San Diego, and it's my first time there, so it's not like I know the lay of the land. Like the fans there have like the back alley entrances and all this stuff, and
and the hotel that was the Manchester Grand, and they were doing like crazy renovation as well, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
like, the front was shut down. It was weird.
Yeah, so. I'm running to meet you and we get to the train tracks and then there's a train. I'm like, okay, so then I'm waiting.
That's happened to everybody.
It's like a movie though. It's like the longest train ever. And I'm beside myself. It's like late at night. Everyone's done with dinner, but there's still thousands of people everywhere. We're all waiting for this train. I'm like, they are holding me back between me and my Wonder Woman rider.
And they're going to make me look so bad.
Yeah, I was getting beside myself and I could get a little crazy as you know now, because you know me now. But at the time, Oscar's just like trying to make me do my breathing.
Yeah, calm,
I was like, how can I climb this train to just jump over? Like, what should I do?
It's not moving that fast.
Right. That's what I was thinking that. I was like literally having legit thoughts like, well, I could leave these guys behind and just, so I'm having just fits. And so I like run up, and then I try to compose myself. And finally we get to go and meet you. And you were so patient. You were obviously exhausted from the panel, I mean, even though I'm sure
it was a long
great
day
with the whole panel and everything, it's exhaustive because you have to be on, you have to be friendly and, you still have to have all this stuff. So, you were so tired, but you were still so gracious to at least entertain, saying hello and going, you know what? I'm not up for an interview right now. And I was actually thankful because I'm like dreading, just drenched with sweat from the run over. And then just like, it was, very late. And so you were so kind though. You're like, well, are you coming to Rose City? And I'm like, I'm not that big of a podcast crew.
What?
And I was like, Portland, I live in Florida, but maybe because you're like, well, I'll do an interview. And I'm like, well, maybe we'll connect by Skype or, we'll do a on air one or something. And so of course you were gracious to take photos with us and entertain yet one more crazy fan person. But I was curious how you saw that interaction because I was like trying to play it cool. Like I didn't just run a mile and then like go crazy right before I met you for the first time.
I didn't. There was nothing going on there where I was like, oh, okay, this is nuts. It was entirely for me. So that day for me had just been top to bottom exhausting, right? Because it started early and it was handled all day. Mm-hmm. Meaning that when you're doing the convention on that level, on the media side, it is very carefully scheduled. Mm-hmm. So that...
And you guys go to the back entrances and stuff with the special passes because
you've got Kobe and you've got Jake and you've got Michael and you've got Dentoon, you've got Cameron, you've got Cole.
Yes.
You have a whole bunch of people who, again, it goes to what I was saying before, right? Which
is just maybe actor entrance.
Right. Well, maybe a quarter of a million people read my stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe. Mm-hmm. Millions upon millions of people have seen Kobe's.
Yes.
So they move you in a very different way around the show.
Yeah, it's super behind the scenes.
Yeah, when I when I used to do that show, I did that show for almost 20 years straight. Mm-hmm. Before I was finally like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's no fun. It's exhausting. And I have not particularly enjoyed, and this is me just turning into a cranky old man, and I admit it, but I have not particularly enjoyed the way San Diego has turned from a comics convention to a pop culture, and in particular Hollywood media convention.
Yes. And actually, I remember you had told me that right then and there. You're like,
Yeah,
I don't normally come here. So
yeah. No, I stopped going, and I want to say, I think my last year regularly was 2009, 2010. And I think starting and I had gone, sincerely, I'd been going since like 90, 91 every year. And when I have been at the show as I'm Greg Rucka, I am a writer, the way you move around the show is you move around with everybody else. You leave the hotel and you try to figure out the best way to get to the hall, and then you get into the hall, and then you go to wherever you're supposed to do your thing. And so when you're going with media, what happens is they've got a van, and they take you out the back of the hotel, and everybody gets in the van, and then they drive 20 minutes. And if you've been to San Diego, it's a 5-minute walk. Then they drive 20 minutes all the way around on the freeway, on the interstate, to get you to the back entrance of the convention center, where security has to let you in, where you get into, whatever your first event is. When you're on the floor, you have this cordon, right? Which of course does nothing but draw attention to you. So you're escorted everywhere. And that day it had been, go to the hall, do the signing at the ABC booth, leave the hall, go to the Hilton, and the Hilton, and it was the Hilton for the rest of the day. It was,
because you do the round table, you do the
it was specific press for cast, and then there was they fed us lunch in like a room on the 38th floor, and then they moved us down to more press, and then they moved us to the panel room to do the Stumptown panel. And then they moved us out of that to another media room. And then that went to a round table. And by that time it was, I think, 3:30, 4:30, at which point you get back in the van, you drive another half an hour to get back to the hotel, at which point we all got out, and Kobe had made reservations for everybody to go to dinner. So And had picked a Mexican restaurant that was quite close to the hotel. So we all go to dinner. And then by the time that's done, it's, 7:30. And it's a 12-hour day.
Yep.
And it is exhausting. So, knowing that I had to meet you and not wanting to be rude about it, I was like, okay, well, let's be honest about it. And because of, I think, the delay and everything else on your side, because of the train, it had been like, so look, it's not that I don't want to talk to you. It's just that you're not going to get anything good out of me. And you have to understand, there were a couple other, like I had met like 2 other people in the lobby prior for 5 minutes.
Yes.
And the other thing that happens at San Diego is that, especially around the hotels, I and others in the industry cannot move without running into somebody, normally a peer or colleague, who you haven't seen since the last San Diego.
Yeah, then it's like
who wants to catch up. And it's like, okay, come on, guys. So just literally the safest place to be is not moving.
Right. Yeah.
Someplace where you're
like newspaper with your hat and your
or in your room.
Yeah.
Or whatnot. So
yes. Well, I was so grateful.
Well, but I mean, like I said, it was really nice to meet you and to meet Oscar and to be able to go, well, look, then I sincerely want to be able to give you the time you deserve. And I think the other thing that had happened is that you had said in our correspondence, like, Lazarus has been very important and it's because of this, and Culture Chat comes out of that. And I mean, what sort of asshole would I have been in the face of that to be like, oh, well, that's just me, Mimi. I'm just that awesome. So I'll catch you some other. I mean, it really was like, okay, no, then we should really.
Yeah.
I was like, we should give this its due if you, because it clearly mattered to you.
Yes.
So, I was genuinely excited when it was like, yeah, I'll be able to come out for Rose City. And that was one of the reasons why I was like, well, then let's do it after the show. If you've got the time, let's do it in an environment where we can talk for as long as you like and take it from there.
Yeah. And I'm going to jump into that in a second, but like the only reason I know about the crazy high security back area of Comic-Con isn't because of me, listeners, just so you know. I was like everyone else on the floor, but I'm kind of friends with Mark Singer. And when he was out there promoting V30th or whatever it was, I found him. And because I still had, as a panelist, I had a special pass, I was able to go behind the curtain and just go talk to him. And they didn't stop me. And I'm pretty good at actually going places I'm not supposed to be anyway. People usually don't stop me. So I went over and I finally caught up with him. And he's like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And we were talking. And then they're like, we need to move. And it literally, he had just left the panel, the stage. And I was saying hi, and he goes, I was wondering how I was going to find you. And then his producer people were like, we got to go. And he's like, she's with me. And they're like, well, she needs a pass then. And he was like, kind of mad about it. And it gave me a pass anyway. And Mark and I went, and they took us, like you said, it's like this like Mission Impossible sounding thing. And we're at another hotel across, and we go into this room, and there's just like media all along the wall with their cameras ready and for them to go back to back. And then they're like, hey, are you here for the roundtables? I'm like, yeah, I'm here for the roundtables. So I ended up sitting in on the V roundtables, which I'm like, God, I haven't seen that since like the 80s. I didn't see the reboots. I don't know what's going on, but I had the experience by chance. So it's not that I know because I was treated that way. I was just riding coattails. So, and I think you may or may not remember, but Oscar literally told you, like, Greg Rucka, you don't understand. This is like Mimi's San Diego highlight right now. Yeah. Like, it's not even sitting in on the panels or even my own panel. Like, he's like, you don't understand. Like, she talks about Lazarus and the like you said, the podcast came from that writing, and you writing, hey, get out there and be an activist and all of these things. And so he was like really trying to make you understand I'm not just like a crazy person, like like you really are an important part of this journey. And so, yes. So then we were going to do an online, like a Skype thing. And you're like, well, I'd prefer to do it in person. And I go, you know what? I've got a kung fu thing out there, kind of like one of my students has a small club that he's just getting started. And it was kind of coming on, like a little anniversary of it. I was like, maybe we could like combine it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to go out there and stalk Greg. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to do it. And then look at, here we are through, 6 months of COVID, because I was like, I'm just going to go. And so we go to Rose City, which was significantly a cooler con in terms of comics, because I was actually horrified at San Diego that the comics corner is literally that. It's like all the way at the end.
It's getting smaller and smaller.
All the way. Yeah. They're like pushed to the side. And I was like, these are the people that I want to come to see. And I think they're treated not well there. Like
they're absolutely not.
I thought it was horrible. Like,
used to be. Yeah, I mean, it is an old guy statement, but I mean, there is a place for San Diego Comic-Con. There is a place for an event like that, but they have to figure out what they want their relationship with comics to be, especially since they're still hosting the Eisners.
And they call it Comic-Con?
Yeah. But the real estate now available to writers and artists, to have an artist alley, to be able to sell their wares. It is so competitive and it is so difficult. And, when Warner Brothers can pay $100,000 for their booth or whatnot, then it is, like I say, there is a place for that kind of show, but let's be honest about the kind of show it is. Even Rose City, is I forget if it's Read or if it's Fan Expo or whichever, but it too is leaning,
because it has the meet these people, but you have to pay for that section.
Right.
But it was at least the smaller section of the con.
There is a huge comics footprint there, and so if that's what you're going to a show for, then you're going to be okay, But it is, it is somewhat frustrating and certainly weird, the way these things have changed. And it didn't used to be like this. It really didn't used to be like that. But like I say, the industry has changed.
Yeah. I mean, on one hand, there's a little bit of good in terms of it brings more mainstream potential readers and buyers and things to the world of comics. But on the other hand, it's like, if you just want to do the whole H thing, it's like, I wouldn't dare. Like, no way. I don't care.
Well, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure it brings anybody into comics.
No, you don't think so?
No, I don't think you go to San Diego Comic-Con and go, comics? I never considered them before, and that is your awakening moment. I just don't think so. You go and you go, look at the cool shit I got, because there's some really cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, what I meant was bringing in actors and things like that, like people who are popular, like love XYZ show, who would normally go to a con, but now there's these panels and things that have that, then perhaps they become perusers is what I meant. Like maybe because there's an extra that wasn't there before. Speaking of Rose City though, I did really, because it's funny, I've been to 2 cons, I think, before Rose City, and both I had a panel at. So it's like, I've never even gone as an actual just guest to go and see what a con is like, because I kind of am agoraphobic. I don't like a lot of people all the time. So it's not something I would normally go to. And It's just ironic. The first 2 I've been to, I'm hosting something or I'm in it. And then Rose City was the first time I got to just walk around like a normal person
and sort of enjoy it. It's not a bad show to sort of, dip your toe into those waters on. It is not so frantic or busy that you feel ever in danger. And San Diego is like that on the floor. Like I can remember being on the floor when my kids were quite young and having to carry Dashiell on my shoulders.
Yeah.
People just don't care.
It's like trampoline and crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's just so many people. It's the numbers thing.
Yeah, it is a great experiment in why you don't put a whole lot of people together.
Well, and certainly not anytime soon as well.
Well,
like we've talked about that, the landscape's changed. But what was also great about Rose City is that I got to then at that point just get to go around to all the writers and artists that I love and say, well, Greg Rucka is inviting me to the and so would you like to be a guest at my show? And they're all like, of course.
you parlayed that well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it was really, really fabulous to get to be invited to your home. I mean, I just really felt like that was such a gracious thing and generous thing to do. And of course, it's established this very long friendship now. But yeah, you're right. Marlo stole the show.
Oh, yeah.
And but it was like a great 2-hour conversation because I didn't know if I'd ever get to talk to you again. I'm like, I'm going to ask everything.
Yeah, we better do everything now. Yeah. Yeah.
Had I known then what I know now, maybe you wouldn't have
taken
2 hours of your time.
And yet we have still not run out of things to talk about. So
no. And I think that's kind of where I was headed with what our chat was today, was like kind of our origin story. But we really, I've said it before, I'm super grateful for these conversations for so many reasons, COVID aside, but our listeners are actually quite amused and enjoying the journey and the entertaining factor as well. So something's going well.
Yeah, well, because if they're not, then we have to stop.
Yes.
Right? Because otherwise, this is just... Yeah, otherwise we can just call each other and not
exactly. We don't need to record it, and I don't have to go through all this work.
Exactly. You don't need to edit it.
Yes. So. Exactly. I could just have a phone conversation like normal people do. But well, actually, I don't know. Do people do that anymore? Like phone conversations? Is that a thing still?
Not as much.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I was
Not
a
as
teenager, I was like, I need my own phone line because, I wanted to be on the phone all the time. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine teenagers now if texting was unavailable on their phone. Like, what would they do? They might melt down and die.
It's interesting. When Elliot got arrested, they confiscated his phone and they haven't returned it. So he has gotten a replacement that's just a cheap little flip phone. And so we are actually talking on the phone.
Right, because then he has to go like 444433221111 to text.
Exactly. So, I guess there is a way back from this world of anything but actually hearing another human being's voice. So,
yeah, I actually, and that shows my age as well. Like, that's my preference. Like, for quick things, back and forth. But I love the human connection. And I feel like I also can get very misinterpreted by text because of my tone.
You can't. Yeah, exactly. You can't hear sarcasm. You can't hear what's meant as a joke.
Yes. Because Oscar will say something. I'm like, yo, don't text that. Someone's going to think you're like going to literally come over and kill them or something. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You need to, it doesn't come across the same.
Yeah,
don't text
quick.
Yeah. I'm like, no.
Or a lol or something.
Yeah. You cannot text
JK.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very strange. It's very strange. But yeah, this has been so much fun. But yeah, Rose City was cool. And then obviously having the conversation was great and everything. But yeah, I mean, I wonder for you as well. It was like I reached out to you at the beginning of COVID to say, hey, I'd love to have you back on the show. But I think in terms of last year, like a year from now, I mean, obviously you wouldn't have guessed that you would have been spending this much time with me.
No, but I'm not complaining.
Okay, good. Because I had told you at the beginning off air, I'm like, I'm afraid you're going to get really tired of me soon. Or I guess if you haven't already, though.
It hasn't happened yet.
Yet. Growth mindset.
Look, we reserve the potential possibilities.
Well, I will keep doing everything in my power to keep it on the up and up. So, but in terms of Comic Cons, like I said, we're actually going to be participating in kind of a virtual one for fun and everything soon with the Hawaii stuff. But have other things come up where you kind of feel like you want to do things like these conventions, whether they're virtual or not? I mean, I know you had to for the old guard and you had to for certain stuff, but I mean, are you just kind of burnt out from that, or do you want to wait till it's back live kind of thing?
I don't mind doing it occasionally. I'm honestly kind of off of conventions right now. And it goes back to what I was saying, a while ago. I think that I don't think many conventions are being run. Look, I mean, they're for profit, and I don't begrudge that. I think that they are now they're crossing into a level of greed that I find problematic. I find it problematic because of the way it exploits the fan base. I find it problematic, and I've had this problem in particular, cons in the US for years and years, how they treat talent. Part of the reason that I think you see a movement for some creators to get the representation into and to charge what they're charging is that they're trying on some level to ensure treatment that they haven't been getting. Mm-hmm. Like, I have done huge conventions where I have been listed as a guest, where they have used my name for advertising, where in exchange for this, they give me a table and they give me airfare and they give me 2 nights at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And that's the bare minimum I should get. I am then expected to be on the floor on some of these shows for 12 hours straight with no support. Nobody comes by. I've got to go do a panel. I've got to use a bathroom. I'd like to have something to eat. Mm-hmm. Nobody, no support whatsoever. Creators are in many ways the core of what these conventions are about. And to be taken advantage of and for granted in the manner in which I have seen so many of my peers be taken advantage of has started. It used to be when I was much younger. It was just the way it was, and you can handle it. But the problem is, then you do a couple of shows where you actually get treated with some respect. Yeah. And you come back to the U.S., and it's invariably international shows. And you come back to the U.S. and you go, holy mackerel, this is messed up.
So you think it's just more that here they don't care as much versus just it's badly managed? Because for me, my only analogy is I run like large scale things like tournaments and whatnot. And when my judges come in, I'm making sure that they're rotated, that there's a schedule, that there's food and water, that there's so many things that you have to think about. So, I mean, do you think it's that literally they set out to go, well, we'll just get them here and work them to death? Or do you think they're just not good enough at setting up the logistics of everything?
Oh, no, I don't think they care.
Okay. Yeah.
I literally don't think they care. I think that they go, well, we could spend money and have more people and have appropriate services, but they don't. They go, we gave you a table. And it's like, yes, you gave me a table. You also sold tickets on my name.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I should not have to argue or fight with you about whether or not I deserve airfare or whether or not the 2 nights of a hotel that you're promising to cover is inadequate when it's a 4-night show. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you expect me to be there literally 12 hours a day. And some of these shows do that. They're like, oh, no, we're going to open the floor at 10 in the morning, but we're opening it at 9 for early, and we're closing it at 7, but 8 for special passes.
Oh, geez.
Right? So I'm supposed to be there as of 8:30 in the morning to set up my table, and I'm not getting out until 8:39 at night. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And the other thing that has to be taken into account is that unless you are, for instance, in particular, an artist who is able to reliably sell their work, most of us aren't selling stuff at these shows, right? In particular, the writers, right?
Because the artists do commissions and things like that.
And they can bring their original art and so on.
There. Yeah.
Right. But me trying to convince you that the thing I'm selling you is an original script is fallacious. It isn't. It's a printout of the original script. It's not the original script. The original script was an electronic document that went to the artist, and God knows what they've done with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so for artists, for people say like a Matthew Clark or a Cully Hamner, right, their ability to sell and commission is part of how they make their living. When I am on a show floor, that is impacting how I make a living. I am not writing.
Right.
And for the days that I am doing the show, I am not working. And for the travel days, I am not working. So your average show costs me about a week of work.
Right.
So again, when you start to factor in all these things, and then I'm factoring in, wow, I'm being treated like crap.
Yeah, it's the worst.
Yeah, then it's like I got no reason to do. I mean, none. There's no reason to do a show anymore. So look, the benefit of doing these online or these virtual ones is, well, I do them from home. It only takes so much time. It is a different experience and a very different interaction. So my feelings aren't really it isn't the change in how we're doing them now, like these virtual shows.
Yeah.
It's simply that I think I'm starting to get showed out.
Yeah.
I'm 50. I've been doing this for 25 years now. I think I've sort of reached a point where I can be a little more judicious in where I'm willing to go.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I the only analogy I have in my mind is I have the same analogy with the Kung Fu stuff, and people are, oh, we want you to come to this event, blah, 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 blah. And we have this tournament and we want you to judge. And it's the same thing. Some places make you go and judge all day and you get maybe a sandwich. And then some places are really good about the care they put and how they treat you. And I've already hit that like years ago. I don't show up at any events. Yeah. Typically. I just am so burnt out, and I've done enough. I've done enough. Yeah. And I support in other ways that I can, but I'm really curious, like you said, internationally, you go to a show, like, for example, I cause like I said, I've only been to a few cons in my whole life and it's a limited experience, but,
I did a show in Calgary about a decade ago. I'd never been treated better. And it was night and day. Like they had support staff roaming the hall, and somebody was checking in every hour. Do you need anything? Do you need somebody to watch the table? Do you need a bathroom? They literally came by with a cart of snacks and food stuff and hot drinks. I was like, oh my gosh.
Which is actually kind of sad, because what you mentioned should be the bare minimum.
Exactly.
That's kind of sad that felt to you so luxurious.
The shows I've done in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Have always been remarkably well done. They have a significant ratio of support to talent. So you have people there to control lines. You have, people again to back you up if you need it. You have a green room, which is here. You can get off the floor if you need 10 minutes, and not only that, but there is a hot meal for you in the green room.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can always find, something to drink. It is, like I say, I'm not talking about,
this is very bare minimum.
I have visited those like high media green rooms, like when you have, for instance, David Tennant. Yeah. Or the, and they got like the shrimp
cocktail and fancy stuff is out. Yeah.
And literally they'll have a chef there and a masseuse. I've been in I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about
just like some bottled water.
It's just, look, there's
coffee, some tea.
Exactly.
Maybe some biscuits.
And that's it.
Like I said, what you just mentioned is actually kind of sad. It's so like very just human decency versus like luxurious.
And like Rose City has provided stuff like that as well now. But there are just way too many shows. For instance, New York Comic Con, I have never been, I've done that show for years and years and years and years. And that show, in my opinion, is more difficult and more hectic than San Diego.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it because of the way the city is laid out, or?
It's where it is.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the venue. Javits is horrible. Javits is not near anything in Manhattan.
Okay.
And Javits is also a monument to mid-70s mafia architecture and kickbacks and grafts. So the building is not in great shape. Like literally, I've been there when it is raining, and there are, the 30-gallon trash cans by every support pillar because water is just sheeting down.
Oh my gosh.
It is an entertaining trip, shall we say.
Yeah.
So, like I say, these are exceptionally first world problems, and I admit it. All right. But
the thing is, you're right. Like, you're there literally working all day, essentially. It's just, it's not I don't believe it's being a diva to ask for a little humanity and
I don't think so
of the people that are making your event. Because if there was no one there to sign books and come say hello to, then there are no fans to come and show up, which is,
And as I've said multiple times, I really do believe this. If they are putting my name on the advertising, then they are using me to sell tickets. Asking me to then go out of pocket to do the show, that's not an equitable arrangement, right? I am donating my time in my name, and I have worked very hard in this industry for my name to mean something. If you are going to exploit it, then I expect recompense. And that recompense need not be financial, but it certainly should come in the form of courtesy and some degree of respect. And this is an apparatus problem, mind you, not an individual problem. Like, I can crank and bitch and moan about New York Comic Con all I like. However, the people who have worked for that show have been some of the sweetest, most considerate people I've ever met. So it clearly is something that is extending down from a corporate level.
Which are the ones making the money, because the people that you work with aren't the ones that getting ticket sale, residuals or anything. They're just there on the ground, probably even volunteers. They got free entrance to the show to go and do all those things. So it's just so uneven. And again, goes back to where Greg is right, and everything's about money. And that's the bottom line, unfortunately.
We're at greed again.
Yes, we're at greed again. So weird. We can't avoid it. Just keeping on the fun Comic-Con thing, whatever. What's like the weirdest thing a fan has said? Or because now obviously I didn't come across as the crazy person, but I'm sure you've had some really interesting interactions. And I know when I'm asked that, I'm always like,
that's hard.
That's hard to kind of come off the top of one's head. But I
mean, you tend to block them out. And one of the things
you go through 20 plus years and you're like, oh gosh.
And you get a tunnel vision, you get table vision. You're sitting behind the table, and literally my own mom could walk up to me and I wouldn't recognize.
You just say,
That said, it's hard to come up with like the weirdest one. I will say, this has happened twice. I've had two different women come to the table dressed as Renee as the question. And it is not until you encounter somebody who has done a good job on the question mask and is wearing it that you realize exactly how unnerving it is.
Yes. Creepy.
Like a really well done question mask will look like their face without features. And it goes to that thing we were talking about with texting versus calling. You lose all of the micro cues that we are trained to see in social discourse. So undoubtedly, these people are there because they are happy to see me and they want me to sign their books. And I know this intellectually. And their voices, they can be happy and excited and so on, but there's nothing. You get nothing back. Right. You are literally putting out all this energy and all this social energy, and there's not a cue coming back. You don't know if they are laughing or are pissed off or are about to knife you and it was for me revelatory of like, wow, the power of that mask is pretty remarkable. It is fortunately not something I think you can ever convey accurately in comics. You're just never going to be able to convey that in the comics.
Interesting. kind of like off the page thing.
Yeah, because it is triggering something that I don't know how you would trigger in a reader.
Yeah, well, it's your own imagination too. It's kind of what you're
exactly
putting into
but
it.
that was pretty. Yeah, I was like, wow, holy mackerel.
Well, it woke you up a little from the usual like kind of factory line type of thing. So, all right.
And I've had some people, like when the Frank Cho thing happened on Wonder Woman Rebirth, I literally was at a Chicago at a C2E2. And it had been really busy because I hadn't done shows in a while. And then the Wonder Woman stuff was really big. And I was sitting there and this couple comes up and they're middle-aged and they're both wearing T-shirts with Frank Cho art on it. So I see them coming. And I am sitting with, on one side of me, I've got Liam Sharp, right? Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who was on the other. And my friend and the guy who handles social media for, all the books, Oswin Donald, Oz, is there with me helping at the table. And they come up and they put the books in front of me to sign, and I sign them. I'm happy to sign them. And then the guy, and it's the guy, says, "So why did you censor Frank Cho?" And I exploded.
Oh.
I knew it was coming. And it wasn't like I yelled, but I was like, okay, you want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. And gave him both barrels for 5 minutes about work for hire. There's no expectation of freedom of expression. Frank can draw whatever the hell he wants on his own time. What he drew was anatomically incorrect. It was exploitative. It was sexist. And my contract said I had cover approval. For him to then go online and to claim a privilege that he did not have, he cannot draw Batman giving a blowjob to Superman and then scream at DC when they don't publish that cover. He can't do it. It's DC's right. It's called work for hire. Mm-hmm. Okay? To turn around and say that I somehow stole his freedom of expression? No. He can't do his job. Mm-hmm. And the result of Frank Cho's temper tantrum is that he revealed himself as ignorant and he brought death threats down on members of my family and me. Oh, gosh. Because the people who respond to that kind of behavior, i.e., you're not letting me have my wank stuff, and I don't like being policed by you, right? Number one, pay Frank the money. He'll draw whatever you want. He's made it perfectly clear he will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't you come to me in a public forum and say you did this thing, because what you have done is you've revealed yourself, one, to be a fool, to be an ignorant fool, and to be mistaken. And just because I'm sitting behind a table here doesn't mean I got to take it. Mm-hmm. And that's the big things. People assume that if you're sitting at the table, you got to take it. Like, no, I don't. I'm there because I want to be. I don't have to talk to any of you people. You're going to treat me badly, I will treat you badly in return. I go to great lengths not to. I have let many a thing slide. But
I'm sure you have.
Like I say, you add into that the rest of the convention experience. And it's like, and this is the thing, I can be good, like if it's an 8-hour, 10-hour day, it's a lot of energy you're putting out. You're putting a lot of energy out. And you're not necessarily getting a lot back. And there will come invariably near the end of the day when the sugar is low, I haven't eaten, and somebody will come up and they will say something snide or incredibly ill-informed. Like the fun one is when somebody who has no idea who you are comes up to the table, picks up a book, and then will say, "Why should I read this?" Or we'll say, or we'll try to walk off with it going, "I think it's free." And at that point, there will be no patience, And so I'll say, "Why should I read this?" And I'll say, You shouldn't. You won't get it. You clearly will not understand it.
Man, yeah, it's just like trying your patience, but it's just rude, and it's the same. It's like anywhere else, like just don't be a jerk.
Yeah,
just don't be a jerk.
It's the will we. It's the will we.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, basically. Oh gosh. Well,
and on that note.
The Mimi and Greg show is always delivering. Yes, I will look forward to talking to you very, very soon.
Yeah, we're talking on Sunday.
Yes, we'll be.
And you're gonna have to make sure when you post this that there is a link, or for people who want to attend the Hawaii Federated Convention.
Yes.
COVID,
I'm going to start promoting and whatnot, and sending out all sorts of fun things. I'll Photoshop lays around our necks and make it, give us the atmosphere. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So thank you so very much, Greg Rucka, everybody.
You take care, Mimi.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to Culture Chat, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please subscribe and rate my podcast. Feel free to leave me suggestions or send an email to mimi@culturechatpodcast.com, or follow me on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.